Let's do it then. Let's actually talk about Eternal Fire, because this is a team that we need to discuss. Like, they did just make the playoffs of the major, and before that playoff match, they were fragging out. Like, everyone was going crazy. Like, at the time, if people don't know, like, Xantares had, like, MVP level numbers in the tournament. Like, Wikadia's like a revelation. I mean, he actually wasn't doing that great at that tournament, but he obviously he's one of the reasons they become relevant again. I think this performance, not only I think actually they didn't give Na'Vi as good a game as they could have, this performance was underwhelming here at Pro League. Yeah. Like, look, I'll give them credit. They did almost get phased. They had that game on the table. That was there, but it's like you said earlier, mate, that almost stinks of like, you don't actually really believe you're a top team. If you're a top team, you have to figure out how to play against lesser teams. You don't just get up for the big game where someone's better than you. That's what underdogs do. That's what the team who, the joke there is, that's your final to play FaZe. Like, for FaZe, that's just Tuesday, or, the old joke from like M. Bison and Street Fighter or whatever. Like, that's no big deal to them. So actually them beating you like that when you're popping off is a really bad sign for you, because what I would say at the outset is this. One of the reasons why, and don't worry, I'm going to do a video about this soon. One of the reasons I'm a bit critical of Madja, is I do think a lot of that is like emotion and fucking romance of the story, and the fact he's still around all these years later, and within like their scene, at least he's legendary and all that jazz. The reason why I have a hard time believing he's some sort of tactical mastermind is because when I watch this teammate, the main thing, and sometimes the only thing they have, is raw fragging. Like, one thing I give them mad props for is I see why all these years they struggled to get the super team together. Like, the joke is, even though Woxic was playing well in some of those games, he actually usually isn't even that sick. It usually is the Xantares and Wikadia show. But that's my problem, mate. First of all, they are so carried by Xantares, it's bonkers. Like, this guy, for real, when they look good, Maniac, has to be like a 1.3 rating type player. Like, he actually has to be, like, in theory, the best rifler in the game, guys. Which, look, he actually always had insane mechanics, so he can do that sometimes. But he also is a player where, I mean, he hasn't been in that many playoff scenarios himself. Like, he has known to drop off. He dropped off in that match against Na'Vi at the major. And then Wikadia, he's just really young. So, like, look, he clearly has talent, by the way. He's going to be a player for the future. Like, maybe he is going to be the next, like, Woxic or Xantares, but he's just too young. So, my problem is, if your main thing you have is fragging, and right now, by the way, I think if you even watch them, this is a team where, like, if you go watch them play against Astralis, for example, they're just outclassed in that game. Like, Astralis has way better T-side, talk about that later, maybe. And then on CT side, when you're against Astralis, you're just going to get battered. Like, you're going to have a hard time there. So, to me, you're relying too much on fragging, and then that also can't just win you the game, because I also think they have the type of fragging that's a bit cynical, mate. Like, it really is like, if Wikadia and Xantares get opening kills, you win the round. If they don't, you'd left in some really dodgy, like 2-on-2s and 3-on-3s. Give me your thoughts on them. Come on.
Okay, so let's start with the major conversation, because I know him personally pretty well, and I think I have a pretty decent opinion of like how he looks at Counter-Strike. I think that he has a really good mind for the game, and I think he probably overcompensate for what's lacking in T-play in his teammates. And that's something that I'm seeing when I'm watching him play. And obviously I don't speak Turkish, but I can make a judgment on who is talking, when, and how is it flowing. I really think that sometimes Major has to do too much.
Oh, you think he has to like fill in the comms or something if someone's just looking at the crosshair,
exactly.
Right.
If I could completely be wrong.
No,
this is an opinion that I have from an external standpoint when I watch him play and I listen to what's happening. I have a feeling sometimes he is probably communicating for other people in order for moves to happen on the map. And I'm not exactly sure if it's whether people don't have the game sense for it or they don't have the initiative for it. But I sometimes feel like if the people are not fragging, and that's what you're talking about, it's the overly reliance on mat fraggers and like multi-kills and all. I feel like sometimes the fabric of their game, mostly on the CT side, is just too individualistic. Like, there's not enough moves happening. There's not enough movement, and I flash for you, we retake that area, we're moving around together. It's either Major is coordinating everything or nothing is happening. And that's a big problem, because that means two things. First one, that means that, again, if the frags don't happen, you're going to have moments where you're being caught off guard and like you're just not in the right position because you haven't reclaimed information, you haven't made the right sort of assumption about what's happening in the round. And the other problem is that he's going to have games where he disappears because it's just too much. It is unhealthy for one player, one captain to have to do the talk for everybody all the time. That's something that sometimes Apex has to deal with as well, by the way, in Vitality, like talking too much, trying to organize plays all around the map. Players have to have a healthy level of responsibility in that, and I don't think that's the case in Eternal Fire. I think Major does too much about it. So he needs his teammates to become more sort of self-reliable and have more initiative and be more spontaneous, more team play. I think that's going to be step one. Now, when it comes to individual performances, the harsh truth is only release Antares is constant.
Yes.
That's really what's happening. Like not that he cannot have a bad game, that can happen, but over time, he is the one metric that will never fail. He's the one that will
Yes.
always give you kill. He's always going to have a crazy output. I talked with
And the eye test just checks out on that guy like a motherfucker,
No,
mate. You will just see him do
no
like
doubt.
3 kills instantly. He
Yeah,
looks
yeah.
sick, doesn't he? Yeah.
You know, mechanically, you know how good he is. There's no doubt about it. And also, I know from the fact that he's quite involved in like the game plans and like talking with Jer as well. So he's way more than apparently just like a robot who kills everybody. He really has an idea about the game. But I talked with Wakadia in Copenhagen because I was trying to figure out the eye test for me is currently that this guy is only really comfortable when he gets to run and he gets to open and he gets to take space. I feel like this is when you get the best out of him. You see, I have so many clips in my mind where he's A ramp on Vertigo and just wide swinging side and finding kills, same in B stairs. And I was talking to him and I said, is it in my head or do you just struggle on the CT side currently? And he told me that, yeah, like I haven't found my groove on the CT side. And that's a real big problem because he's obviously like super mechanically gifted. Like you can see how quick, like his time to kill, his headshot percentage is really high. He's very impressive at that, but he doesn't have this solidity of a player who can play off angles and just do a -2 in a strong position. Sometimes he get caught and it just doesn't work. Like as if whenever he's standing still, his skill drops like 30%. Obviously, I know it's not as easy as that. I'm simplifying here, but like he hasn't really found a way to use his assets and his strength on the CT side. That is, for me, it's really limiting because he sometimes become like a liability. You play on Nuke, you play Eternal Fire on Nuke, you can just go inside. Like he's not comfortable. He doesn't feel great on that A side. It's very rare that I see him just clean up crew. So that, for me, that's one problem. And then that is something that I imagine could be either fixed or improved over time because, as you said, he is green, he is young. I believe he's got a great career ahead of him.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to hit the panic button quite yet. But I feel like for Woxic, it's different. Woxic is inconsistent. Yep. He has extremely high highs, and we all have maps in mind. By the way, Dust 2 is coming back in the pool, and we all know how a Woxic on Dust 2 can look like. So the high highs are like engraved in our memory because there are moments where he just catches on fire and it's over. But there's also games where his impact is like almost non-existent.
Yes.
So how are you supposed to build a game plan? And now I'm putting myself in Major's shoes again. How am I supposed to build a game plan if I am unsure about what's going to be the output of my sniper? Like, how am I building a setup? And how am I building moves if one game he's going to give me 3 kills in that position and the other one is going to give me 0? Yes. Like, I think it's really hard. The CT side is where I feel like they really struggle to have any kind of certainties about how they want to approach rounds, and I believe a lot of it is down to individual consistency. So that was for like more like micro analysis. In the grand scheme of things, I think you're right. It's a bit of a make or break moment for them. Like, are they going to become a team that is reliably top 8? Are they going to be like a playoff team that we always have to contend with, that we always have to talk about, and we always have to appreciate? Or are they just capable of giving 200% when they're about to do something incredible? And when not, then they're going to become a middling team who is vulnerable to losing to lesser teams that they are not supposed to lose to, as in Seoul, for example. I was hoping the playoffs at the major would be the moment that changes that. And apparently hasn't been the case yet.
Yeah, okay, I'll do all those I'll do it in reverse order. So in terms of like the ranking thing, that's even a good way to frame it. Obviously, like they were like, I think number 7 team or something when that match against FaZe took place, right? I agree with you. The premise goes, because of making top 8 at the major and having some big results, if you only watch the big matches, people are going to want to believe, right? This is like a super good, like, it's essentially like the ultimate like upset team. They could maybe win like first round of a playoff game or something, and so you have to worry about them if you're a top team. So the question is, are they like the 7th or 8th team? The problem I worry about is I think if you do the aggregate, it feels more like they're going to be like the 11th best team, if you know what I mean. And that does mean you'll miss some playoffs or you'll just get bounced in the first round. Then on the Woxic thing, I definitely agree there because this is where I know who's watched Woxic when he wasn't in this team. Because, bro, the Woxic that used to be in Hellraisers way back was a stud. That's when, as far as I know, he was quite motivated to play. And if people don't know, those teams were a nightmare, whether it was like him and Issa and a bunch of players who were like all speaking second language English with like fucking Angel or whoever like coordinating them. Like, what a weird team that is, right? But he used to be a stud. And then when he had Carrigan, and let's be real, almost everyone's better with Carrigan, by the way, guys. He was really fucking good that 2019. He's actually one of the players, sadly, where I do think the online era sort of like it somewhat crippled his career because he's clearly a guy who never gave a fuck about an online game. The irony is this, guys. Xantares is the ultimate onliner. Woxic doesn't look like he even fucking engages his brain when it's online. He's like the sort of guy where like LAN is his cup of coffee in the morning. Like, don't talk to me till I've had my cup of coffee. It's that meme, right? But the problem now is this is too many years later. And so now when he's coming this team, well, remember, that was the hype all those years, Maniac. It's like, what if Woxic and Xantares and could all be in the same team? And by the way, we haven't even mentioned it, but shout out Calix for somehow actually being sort of like a supportive element. But then he can sometimes frag out because he does still have those skills. Even that's even the part of the team I find canny, I quite enjoy. But yeah, Woxic right now, the problem is he's not the player he was in Mouse like that, guys. Like, he just hasn't had anywhere close to that impact. He's not bad, but I'll tell you what, even some of his fragging's deceptive. Because if you ever go and look, it's just all cleaned up all the lower teams, mate. Because again, he's the AWPer. Like, it's a really hard role to overperform in, guys. It's probably the most like binary role in the game. And then on the Madger one, I've got a little bit of a rant here. So I've got a few places I'm going to go, but you'll be able to follow me. You'll see where I'm going on this. So the problem I have goes like this. Right? Already, I don't think they have like amazing tactical aspect. Now, to be fair, maybe their style isn't even that. Maybe people like what the Xantares and the Woxic. I'm pretty sure they do want some freedom to do their own thing. But one of the problems I also have with Madger is this. It's actually his individual game, mate. Because this is where I know who only watched the Major. At the Major, that was like one of the craziest over performances he's had individually for ages. You might remember, he was like carrying the fucking Swiss system. He was going crazy. And there's no way he's going to do that because he's mega old, guys. And he's the IGL, right? Not only was that like fool's gold, you're not going to get that again. But more importantly, there's actually one aspect to his game that I found very disappointing. And what's funny is I could just mega dunk on him. I will do that in my video. But I'll put a tiny bit of like balance to it here. Go like this, right? I'll preamble it by saying most IGLs sometimes have this issue because everyone who's an IGL on some level has to at least think they're smart or have a cerebral approach to the game and think about the bigger picture. One of the problems he actually has for real, Maniac, I've seen this a lot of times now, people can go back and check, is, mate, he is actually so fucking much of a liability in late round scenarios. It's mental. Like, if he's in a 1v1 or a 2v2, bro, the amount of times I've seen him actually, like, not even see the timer and, like, the clock runs out and you don't plant the bomb or you don't come in time to have a chance to defuse or you take, like, a weird move. And here's the reason why I said I'm going to shade in that, like, in theory, it might be because you're smart. Because, believe it or not, this actually reminds me of some IGLs where they would be bad in clutches because they overthought the clutch. Like, you know, one of the great things about a clutch is there's some people can win clutches. Like, I'll give an example because he's really good right now. Like, I make the joke that the reason I can say JL's really good in clutches is, my joke is, it's like his brain isn't turned on, so he just fucking shoots people. He's just like, yeah, oh, I'll go left and shoot. I got him. He's never overthinking it because my joke is he's not thinking. You get the joke, right? But in a way, that is a good quality to have. Whereas the problem I think for someone like Madger, when I've seen this, is it's like you yourself when you're in the 1vx don't believe you're going to win it. And so you're already triple, quadruple thinking, oh, should I back off? Should I go in? But if I go in, then he just kill me easy when I come to go to the defuse. If I tap, then he's going to know. Right? The reason why that sucks, for real, I'll give you the example of my favourite IGL, Carrigan. It's because, bro, that's why I actually love watching Carrigan's game in the phase era when he came back. Because it's not that, like, look, everyone knows on the T side, he just gets fragged immediately. Like, his job is just space create. And that's why we all go crazy if he ever has T side kills and he's like getting some 2Ks or whatever. We're all like, holy shit, how are they going to beat FaZe now? But the thing I actually like about watching his game, not just the tactics, is Carrigan, since he came back to FaZe, really did learn the movie storyline I always wanted him to, which is, mate, you've already lost 1 billion of these games and 1 billion close games and choked. At this point, you may as well just make the big balls play. And if you lose, you're going to lose anyway. But if you win, you give yourself a chance, because there's a concept from poker people might not understand, which is the reason why in poker, the traditional meta back in the day, believe it or not, was you did the opposite. You played incredibly defensive. You just waited until you had the good hands, and then you tried to guess what are the likelihood this guy has like a hand comparable to mine. You sort of did a maths calculation in your brain, and then you're like, right, I raise or I fold based on that, right? And you sort of played like a computer. But what happened was the meta became the opposite. The meta became to be hyper-aggressive because people realized when you're aggressive, even if you don't have the better hand, it increases the chances the other guy folds. And basically, just aggression adds like an extra percentage chance to win the round. And I feel like in clutches, that's a real thing. Like, if you play way too safe in a clutch, I mean, the joke is, just watch that fucking Sun Pius where he lost that last round against fucking G2 52. He didn't even have a chance because he tried to check every fucking corner because he's had a rifle, not an AWP, and he never made the ballsy play or like gambled that he was somewhere. And in doing so, he actually lost the round without a chance to win it. Unless he was literally correct on like the first 7 places the guy was, he never had. Madge's doing a bit of that for my money because that's what I think changed in someone like a Carrigan. Is like they started playing aggressive like that, and you can still lose the round, but that's how you give yourself a chance. And in fact, I even think the reason I give the Carrigan example as a good one is because he also is not a very skilled player right now. So another thing is, if you're not that skilled, well, here's the great thing about clutch is they do somewhat even out the skill. There aren't that many players do their insane headshot on the clutch. Everyone gets a little bit nervous. So if everyone's a bit nervous and you just make a decisive play and gamble early on, if you're the IGL, you give yourself a chance to win it. So I feel like in that sense, he also, because I'll share this social aspect in as well. You probably saw that when they lost earlier in the tournament, he did himself like a massive tweet in Turkish. I had no fucking paragraphs, but a lot of pros are like that. He did like a massive apology to his fans. Because what I'm guessing, Maniac, is he probably has the same problem the Brazilians told me they had back in the day, where when I told them, like, sorry, I hated on you, but, you know, like all your fans were attacking me, and they were like, bro, they attack us when we lose. Like, I think that thing's happening to him. I think the Turkish fans do expect them to be like the 5th best team in the world. And so if they lose, they have to, I think essentially, I think the pressure's getting to him a little bit. So I think, they have to resolve that aspect as well. Because in that scenario, you're supposed to be the most experienced player. Like, do like the Carrigan move. Just give yourself a chance. I feel like sometimes people think themselves out of Counter-Strike games, you know.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And knowing him, he might definitely be a victim of overthinking. And like, I used to be like that as well sometimes when I would play, where I would be so aware of how there are many different ways I'm going to lose this round that at the end, you would just constrain yourself, because you realize, you think about all of the, the different X and Y's of the clutch situation. You're thinking, oh my God, the time is against me and there was a guy behind me. And that there's no way. You cannot always just deduct what you are supposed to do in a clutch. Sometimes you have to hedge your bet and decide that there's one scenario in which I win, and in that scenario, that guy is to the left, not to the right. And if he's to the right, I lose.
Yes.
So be it. Let's go. And I white swing the left angle. He's definitely a victim of that. Also, if you make the example of Carrigan, and I was talking about having autonomous teammates who can make their own decisions, he's also very well served in FaZe. I think he now probably has a bit more luxury to sometimes just plug it into his own game sense and just say, okay, I'm going to make this move now because I don't have to hold the hands of the kids behind me. Like, if I'm crossing this smoke right now because that's the play I feel like is happening, my team is going to be fine. They know what to do. So yeah, definitely. I think you're onto something with the clutching and the overthinking for Major.
Because here's the thing, I want to actually contrast, not Eternal Fire, because as I pointed out, they actually do have the fraggers. If anything, they need to just get some of that. And by the way, the other thing they also have to work out in Eternal Fire is this. You've got to work on that map pool, boys. You got the 2 maps you're really good on. If it isn't fucking Virgo and Anubis, like it starts to get, as we say in English, it gets hard sledding, mate. Like that's like fucking, it's like going uphill on some of those other maps. So you have to realize in the modern day, guys, you have to be able to be good on maps like Nuke. I mean, it's going out now, but Overpass would have been one back in the day. Like you got to have something more on these maps too. To see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content, well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.